Imagine waking up one day and realizing that everything you thought would take years only needed 6 months. Not 10 years, not 5, just 6. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you did. Because you chose to stop waiting for the right time and decided that this moment, this very stretch of time in front of you was enough. See, we don't suffer from a lack of potential, we suffer from a lack of urgency. We convince ourselves that the future is some distant land, far away, where we'll finally get it together. We'll be more disciplined, more focused, more driven tomorrow. And then tomorrow becomes next week, next month, next year. The truth is, most people aren't short on time, they're short on commitment. They're short on vision. And maybe they're short on belief. That's where 6 months comes in. There's something powerful about giving yourself a time frame that is long enough to create real change, but short enough to stay emotionally invested. 6 months is not so far away that you lose motivation, and yet it's just enough time to completely reinvent who you are, what you do, and how you show up in the world. I'm not here to sell you a fantasy. I'm not saying that 6 months of hard work will give you a mansion, a private jet, and an overnight empire. That's not the point. The point is transformation, internal and external. It's about who you become when you finally decide to give your full effort to something that matters, when you stop dabbling and start digging, when you stop asking what if and start saying let's find out. Here's why 6 months matters, because it's just long enough to test your resolve. Long enough to see what you're made of. Long enough to take an idea that's been living in your head and bring it into the real world. That book you keep thinking about writing, 6 months. That body you've been saying you'll get into shape, 6 months. That business idea you've been sitting on, waiting for the perfect time, give it 6 months of consistent action and see what happens. I promise. The version of you that shows up in October will not look anything like the version of you who's scared to start in April. Now, let's be clear. It's going to be hard. That's the point. If it were easy, everyone would have already done it. But hard doesn't mean impossible. Hard means meaningful. Hard means worth it. In fact, the hardest things are usually the things that make life feel worth living. They give you a sense of purpose, of pride, of direction. 6 months of hard work is not a sentence. It's a gift. A gift you give to your future self. Most people don't commit to 6 months because they're afraid of failing. But I'd argue that what we should really be afraid of is never trying. Failing gives you feedback, it teaches you, it humbles you. But never starting, that steals your time quietly. It takes your potential and lets it rust. It convinces you that you're not ready, when the truth is you've always been ready, you just haven't decided. Decisions change everything. Not knowledge, not talent, not even luck. Decisions. You decide to show up. You decide to do the work. You decide that 6 months of effort is worth more than 6 years of regret. That's what this is about. Not some motivational quote, not some cute morning routine. It's about choosing your future with intention. I once spoke to a young woman who told me she was stuck. She had ideas, she had dreams, but she couldn't get started because she kept comparing herself to people who were already successful. She said, I don't know if I can ever get there. I asked her one question. What if you gave it 6 months, no distractions, no excuses, just full commitment? What's the worst that could happen? She paused, thought about it, and then she smiled. I guess I'd find out what I'm capable of. That's it. That's the key. Because most people live their entire lives never finding out. What I want you to hear today is that the life you want, the clarity, the energy, the self-respect, it's not found in some distant future. It's 6 months away. But only if you start, only if you decide. There is no secret, no shortcut. Just effort, focus, and time. Time that's already going to pass anyway. The next 6 months will come and go, whether you use them or not. The question is, will you look back and say, I gave it everything, or I waited again? It's tempting to think we need a perfect plan, that we need to know every step before we take the first one. But that's not how real change works. Real change starts when you say, I don't know how this ends, but I know it begins right now. 6 months of hard work isn't about knowing everything. It's about trusting that effort leads to clarity, that showing up creates momentum, and that action is always more powerful than hesitation. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to begin. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be willing. If you're tired of overthinking, tired of watching others pass you by, tired of wondering when it'll finally be your time, These next 6 months could be the most important stretch of your life, not because they're magical, but because you finally decide to make them matter. So let me ask you, what could your life look like 6 months from now if you started today, not with perfection, not with guarantees, but with purpose? You already have what it takes. All that's missing is the start. We live in a world that tells us we can have everything and we can have it now, instant results. Overnight success, one click and it's on your doorstep, one swipe and your world changes. But real life doesn't work like that, not the meaningful parts anyway. Not growth, not purpose, not freedom. The truth is, anything worth having will cost you something. Not money necessarily, but effort, focus, discipline, and more than anything else, sacrifice. Not forever, not for a lifetime, but for a season. For a window of time where you say to yourself, this matters more than my comfort right now. This matters more than my distractions. And when you make that decision, when you say yes to that short-term sacrifice, you open the door to a kind of long-term freedom that most people never get to experience. We all want freedom. Freedom to do work we care about, freedom to spend our time with the people we love, freedom to live without constant stress, freedom to wake up with energy, purpose, and peace. But here's the thing, freedom is given, it's earned. And you don't earn it all at once. You earn it in small, quiet moments when no one's watching, when it would be easier to quit, when the temptation to take it easy is louder than your reasons for starting. Sacrifice, in this context, doesn't mean suffering. It means choosing the hard path now so you can walk the better path later. It's saying no to what feels good in the moment to say yes to what matters in the long run. That means saying no to scrolling endlessly so you can build something that outlives the scroll. It means saying no to staying comfortable so you can grow into someone who's capable of more. It means trading the need to be entertained for the opportunity to become extraordinary. And it's not about being perfect, it's about being consistent, it's about being intentional. People talk a lot about motivation, but motivation fades. Sacrifice doesn't rely on how you feel, it relies on what you've decided. And when you truly decide to commit 6 months to something that matters, you stop waiting for motivation. You wake up and do the work because you understand what's on the other side of it. You see, short-term sacrifice isn't about deprivation. It's about direction. It's about aiming your time, energy, and attention towards something with real value. It's about choosing to be the person who shows up. The person who honors the goal even when no one's clapping, even when no one sees the progress yet. Because eventually they will. Eventually the results will speak, the change will show, the internal shift will become external. And then what once felt like a sacrifice will now feel like freedom. You'll go to bed knowing you gave it your best. You'll stop negotiating with your doubts. You'll begin to trust yourself because you've proven that your word means something, that your time means something, that your life is not just happening to you, you're shaping it with every single choice. There's a myth we've been sold that sacrifice means losing something forever. That if you give something up now, it's gone for good. But that's not true. Most of the things you give up during this 6-month sprint, the extra hours of screen time, the late nights that leave you tired, the comfort zones you keep returning to, those things aren't serving your future anyway. What you give up, you're not really losing. You're exchanging it for something greater. You're giving up ease to gain strength. You're giving up routine to gain transformation. You're giving up the short-term dopamine hits to earn long-term confidence. Because that's what this really gives you, confidence. Not the loud kind that boasts or brags, but the quiet kind that comes from integrity, from alignment, from knowing you made a promise to yourself and you kept it. That is the kind of freedom we rarely talk about, the freedom of self-trust, the freedom of being proud of how you've shown up in your own life. We think freedom is found in doing whatever we want, whenever we want. But real freedom comes from discipline. It comes from choosing what matters most, not what's easiest. And for 6 months, if you can make that choice, not once, but over and over, you will become someone different, someone better, someone stronger. And that version of you, that version doesn't just have more success or more results. That version of you feels free because they know they earned it. So let's talk about what this really looks like. 6 months of waking up a little earlier than you want to. 6 months of staying in the discomfort just a little longer. 6 months of turning down the quick rewards so you can build something lasting. 6 months of quiet mornings, focused evenings, and repeating the work even when no one claps. 6 months where your future matters more than your excuses. That's the price, and it's worth every second. You will feel the pull to stop, to coast, to say, I've done enough. But enough for what? Enough to maintain the life you want, or enough to finally create the one you've dreamed of? This stretch of effort is not punishment. It's a process. And if you stay with it, it will take you places comfort never could. The most fulfilled people I know didn't get there by doing what was easy. They got there by doing what was right for them over and over until the world caught up, until the results showed, until the peace arrived. And every single one of them had a moment where they made a choice. A choice to trade short-term ease for long-term impact. That's what you're choosing now. So the question is not, can you do it? You already can. The question is, are you willing to go without for a little while so you can have so much more later? Not just money, not just titles, but pride, peace, fulfillment, freedom. The next 6 months are going to pass either way. The only question is, will you make the sacrifice that leads to the life you want? Or will you stay in the cycle of comfort that keeps you from becoming who you're capable of being? You don't need a perfect plan. You just need to begin with clarity, with commitment, and with the willingness to trade what's easy now for what's extraordinary later. That's the trade. That's the sacrifice. That's the path to freedom. When we think about changing our lives, we often imagine something massive, a bold decision, a dramatic leap, some huge visible transformation that signals we've finally made it. But real change rarely looks like that. In fact, the most powerful kind of change is the kind that doesn't draw applause, not at first. It doesn't come with fireworks. It comes quietly. It comes slowly. It comes through consistency, because it's not the big actions that shape your life. It's the small ones, done over and over. It's not what you do once in a while. It's what you do every day. That's where the power is. We love stories of overnight success, but what we don't see is the years of invisible work that led up to that one visible moment. The success wasn't sudden, it was earned. Not in a single moment, but in thousands of them. The early mornings, the quiet nights, the difficult days where nothing seemed to be working, but the effort continued anyway. That's consistency. And it's not exciting, at least not at first. That's why so many people struggle to stick with it, because consistency is boring. It doesn't feel like progress. It doesn't feel like transformation. Not right away. It feels repetitive. It feels quiet. But that's the point. Because anything worth having is built slowly. And anything built slowly is built to last. You don't have to change your entire life in a day. In fact, you can't. But what you can do is wake up today and do something. One thing that moves you forward. One decision, one habit, one action. And then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Because success doesn't come from intensity, it comes from consistency. Intensity might get you started, but consistency is what finishes the job. Imagine if you did just one thing each day that aligned with your goals. Just one. How much closer would you be in a week, a month, in 6 months? The truth is, we overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in 6 months of showing up. The secret isn't more effort, it's more rhythm. It's more patience. It's more trust in the process. Consistency isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. Showing up even when you don't feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. Because that's when it matters most. Discipline isn't tested when you're excited, it's tested when you're tired, when you're discouraged, when you're tempted to skip a day. And it's in those moments, those small internal battles, where growth happens. Every time you follow through, even when it's hard, you're casting a vote for the person you're becoming. You're training your mind to believe that you can be trusted, that your word means something, that your goals are worth the effort, that you're not someone who quits when it gets uncomfortable. You're someone who finishes what you start. And what's amazing is how fast momentum can build, not from doing more, but from doing what matters consistently. It's not about going all out for 3 days and burning out. It's about doing the work in manageable pieces every single day. That's how habits are formed. That's how confidence is built. That's how lives are changed. We tend to think transformation is a lightning strike, but it's really a slow sunrise. You don't see it at first. It's gradual. But then one day you look around and everything looks different. You feel different. You are different. That didn't happen by accident. That happened because you made a decision to keep going even when it was easier to stop. And let's be honest, there will be days when it feels pointless. Days when the scale doesn't move, when the bank account looks the same, when no one notices the effort you're putting in. But here's the thing, consistency is never wasted. Every rep, every step, every uncomfortable conversation, every hour of focus, it's all compounding. You may not see it today, but it's working beneath the surface. Roots grow before the fruit shows. Think of a tree. You plant a seed, you water it, you care for it, and for weeks, maybe even months, you see nothing. Does that mean it's not working? Of course not. Something is happening beneath the surface. A foundation is forming, and one day it breaks through, and then it grows, not because of what you did that day, but because of everything you did before that day. That's what consistency does. It builds you up quietly so that when your moment comes, you're ready. The people you admire, the ones who seem disciplined, focused, successful, they're not special. They're consistent. They do the work when it's not glamorous. They keep promises to themselves. They don't rely on motivation. They rely on systems, routines, and habits. And you can do the same. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be consistent enough to keep showing up. And here's the best part. Once consistency becomes part of your identity, everything gets easier. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop debating every little decision. You just do the thing because it's who you are now. You go from, I hope I can do this, to this is what I do. That shift, that's everything. Because it's no longer about forcing effort, it becomes effortless. But it starts with today, not tomorrow, not next week, today, with one decision, one act of alignment, one step toward the future you want to build, and then another tomorrow and the next day. It's not the size of the step, it's the consistency of the pace. This is how 6 months of hard work changes a life. Not in one grand gesture, but in hundreds of small, consistent choices. That's the secret. That's the difference. That's the power you already have. Because the truth is, you don't need a new year. You don't need a new plan. You don't even need more time. You just need to keep going. Quietly, steadily, intentionally, one day at a time. And if you do that, if you really commit to that pace, to that rhythm, you'll look back in 6 months and be unrecognizable to the person you were when you started. And the world won't remember every step you took, but you will. And that's what makes it worth it. Before anything great ever happens, belief comes first. Before the transformation, before the success, before the breakthrough, before the results anyone can see or measure, the first and most essential ingredient is belief. Belief in the idea, belief in the effort, belief in yourself. And yet, that's exactly what most people skip over. Because it's the hardest part, it's invisible, it doesn't feel like progress, it doesn't give you instant proof. It just quietly sits inside you asking one question. Are you willing to keep going even when there's no evidence yet? That's the difference between those who eventually succeed and those who never start or give up too soon. It's not talent, it's not timing, it's not luck. It's belief. Belief is the spark that makes all the other things possible, and belief by its nature has to show up before the results do. Because when you're standing at the beginning of something, whether it's a new business, a fitness journey, a creative pursuit, or a decision to take your life in a new direction, there is no proof that it will work. There's no guarantee, no applause, no data. There is only you. And the question, do I believe this is possible? And if you don't, it ends right there. See, the results don't create the belief creates the results. And most people get this backward. They want evidence before effort. They want the world to say you're doing great before they've even taken the first step. But that's not how meaningful work is done. That's not how people grow. It's not how lives change. You have to believe before the world does. You have to believe before the results show up. You have to believe when it's just you alone doing the work in silence. because there will be silence, long stretches of it, days where nothing seems to move, moments where you wonder if it's working, if it's worth it. And in those moments, you will either feed your doubt or feed your belief. One leads to quitting, the other leads to becoming someone you didn't even know you could be. Belief is not pretending everything is fine. It's not positive thinking or blind optimism. It's a quiet conviction, a decision to keep showing up even if you feel afraid, even if you're uncertain, even if every part of you wants to stop. That's belief. That's what fuels the early days of any transformation. Think of the most accomplished people you admire, the athletes, the artists, the leaders, the innovators. All of them started at zero. They all had days where no one believed in them. They all faced critics, external and internal. They all had moments when quitting would have been easier. But they believed, not in the guarantee of success, but in the value of the journey. They believed in the process, and they believed in themselves when it counted most. You'll never know what you're capable of until you commit to something long enough for your belief to become stronger than your excuses. Belief is what pushes you past the initial resistance. It's what keeps you moving when the excitement wears off. Everyone starts something with a burst of energy, but that energy fades, the newness goes away, the work becomes real, the effort becomes daily. That's when most people walk away. They think the lack of results means it's not working. But that's not true. It is working if you keep showing up. It's working beneath the surface. It's working in your mindset. It's working in your discipline. It's working in your habits. The first changes are always invisible. They're internal. They're hard to measure, but they're the most important ones because the visible results, the money, the fitness, the recognition, the success, they don't happen until you've done the internal work. And the internal work is only possible when you believe it's worth it. Belief is a choice you make every day. Not once, not when it's convenient, every single day. You choose to believe the effort matters. You choose to believe your time is not being wasted. You choose to believe that your future self will thank you for what you're doing today, even if today feels hard, even if no one else understands why you're doing it, because belief is lonely sometimes. Not everyone will get it. Not everyone will cheer you on. That's okay. It's not their job to believe in you, it's yours. It's your responsibility to carry that fire, to keep it alive when the days are long, when the doubts creep in, when you feel like giving up. Your belief is what keeps the dream alive while it's still in seed form. And the beautiful thing is this. Once you start to believe, once you really own that belief, everything else gets lighter. Not easier, but lighter. Because you're not just chasing a result, you're moving in alignment with your purpose. You're not doing it to prove something, you're doing it because it matters. You're doing it because you believe that 6 months of hard work can absolutely change your life. Not because of what happens at the end, but because of who you become along the way. The person who believes when it's hard becomes resilient. The person who believes without proof becomes brave. The person who shows up because of belief, not results, becomes unstoppable. So here's the challenge. Before anything else happens, before the world validates your effort, before the outcome arrives, believe. Even if it's messy, even if you're scared, even if the path is unclear, believe that the work you're doing matters. Believe that the small steps count. Believe that 6 months of consistent, focused, disciplined effort will produce something beautiful. And believe that the version of you on the other side is worth fighting for. You don't need certainty to start. You need belief. The rest will follow. We spend so much of our lives trying to achieve something, a job, a title, a house, a bank balance. But at the core of it, beneath all the goals and ambition, is something more meaningful, something far deeper. It's the desire to become who we're meant to be, the desire to live a life that feels true, not just impressive, the desire to wake up and recognize ourselves in the mirror, not because we've made it, but because we've grown into someone we're proud of. But here's the truth most people never say out loud. Becoming that version of yourself takes work, real work. The kind that isn't always exciting, the kind that isn't always visible, the kind that challenges your comfort, questions your patterns, and asks you to be more honest with yourself than you've ever been before. And that journey, it doesn't happen in some far-off future. It begins the moment you choose to change, The moment you say, I'm tired of being stuck in cycles that don't serve me, I'm ready to take responsibility, I'm ready to evolve. It's not a small thing. That's not a motivational quote. That's a shift in identity. And it changes everything. Because the version of you that you're trying to become, the one with more clarity, more discipline, more peace, more presence, that version doesn't live in the distant someday. That version is built slowly, patiently, and intentionally through the choices you make right now. Every decision to show up when it would be easier not to. Every habit you form when no one's watching. Every time you keep going when it would be easier to quit. That's where your future self is being formed. We think transformation is about doing more. But really it's about becoming more. More aligned, more authentic, more courageous. It's about shedding the layers of doubt, fear, and distraction that keep you from showing up fully. It's not about becoming someone different. It's about becoming more you. The version of you that has always been there, just buried beneath years of conditioning and compromise. But to reach that version of you, something has to shift. Not externally, but internally. You have to stop waiting for the perfect time. You have to stop blaming your circumstances. You have to stop telling yourself the story that you're not ready. Because readiness doesn't come before the journey, it comes from the journey. You become ready by beginning, you become strong by showing up, you become confident by doing the work, even when it's hard. And here's the part no one prepares you for. The road to becoming who you're meant to be will cost you. It will cost you your excuses. Your comfort, your old identity, your attachment to staying the same. Growth always requires a letting go, a death of who you've been so you can give birth to who you're becoming. And it's painful, it's uncomfortable, but it's necessary because the cost of staying stuck is far greater than the cost of change. For 6 months, you have an opportunity, not just to work harder, not just to chase goals, but to step into the process of refining, reimagining, and realigning who you are with who you want to be. That's not about checking boxes. That's about choosing to live with more intention, to trade distraction for direction, to stop going through the motions and start showing up with purpose. And it starts with one decision. The decision to take yourself seriously. The decision to treat your time like it matters. The decision to stop waiting for someone else to rescue you and to become your own source of progress. Because no one can do this work for you. People can support you, people can inspire you, but you have to walk the road. You have to carry the weight. You have to believe that becoming the person you're meant to be is worth the discomfort it will take to get there. But here's the good news. Once you begin, something inside you shifts. You start to trust yourself again. You start to feel the pride of keeping promises to yourself. You start to see glimpses of who you could be. And that version of you, they're not perfect, they're not fearless, but they're real, they're consistent, they're grounded, and they've earned every step of growth through action, not intention. We all have a vision of who we want to become. But most people never meet that version of themselves, because they get stuck in cycles of avoidance. They wait, they hesitate, they rationalize, and all the while, time moves forward, life keeps going, and the gap between who they are and who they want to be grows wider and wider. But 6 months of focus can close that gap faster than years of waiting. Because when you stop starting over and commit to becoming, the compound effect of your effort begins to work for you. You gain momentum, you gain clarity, and perhaps most importantly, you gain integrity. The kind that comes from living in alignment with your values, because that's what this is really about. It's not about chasing some external version of success. It's about becoming the kind of person who is proud of how they show up, who is no longer driven by fear or comparison, but by purpose, who no longer chases validation, but lives with vision. That's what it means to become who you're meant to be. It's a quiet revolution. It's not loud. It doesn't demand attention. But it changes everything. Because once you meet that version of yourself, you'll never want to go back. Once you experience the peace that comes from showing up with consistency and integrity, you'll wonder why you waited so long. So here's the invitation. 6 months. Not of perfection, not of pressure, but 6 months of becoming. 6 months of removing what no longer serves you. 6 months of showing up not just for your goals, but for your growth. 6 months of choosing the long game, of thinking bigger, of living deeper. Because the person you're meant to be is not a fantasy. It's not a future dream. It's a decision. And that decision starts now. Not later, not when it's easier. Now, and the beautiful thing is this, once you decide, the path becomes clear. Not always easy, but clear. And 6 months from now, you won't just have more results, you'll have more you. And that is the greatest transformation of all.